Greetings, Star Adventurers. This is GM Kurt, and now we are talking with the author of Tales from Distant Stars. I am the co-author,
Hello.
and
I'm Conrad. Wrote up parts of it. He wrote up other parts. We're just going to start talking about this.
okay, so why did we choose to write a science fiction role-playing game?
I believe it was, we originally were talking about what it would take to do it and how hard it would be. And then we sort of be like, shouldn't be too hard. Let's do it.
Okay, so what was going on in the time was that a certain other company had been fooling around with the Star Frontiers name and promising a game that never arrived. And I think the difference between us and them is we have one teenager, one adult, neither of which are putting a budget into this game, and yet we have actually put something out and got it published before an actual company did. That was the whole thing, you know?
Didn't they have a few months head start?
Oh yeah, they had a few months head start, and they spent most of that time harassing people on social media rather than putting out a product. But anyway, okay, so we got this game. We don't have any art in here, so it's very printer friendly. You know, it's not going to tear through your toner cartridge trying to get that PDF printed. What would you like to discuss first?
I believe the plan was to do character to character, sort of interpersonal conflict, and then do some of the more ship to ship, and then get into maybe some of the design decisions on the design process of how we did it.
Okay. So, personal combat, that's the part I did. And the idea was to come up with a set of rules that would be fairly familiar to most players. Because a lot of players are coming from other D20 based games. And what we wanted to do, make it simple, make it easy, we use a D20 and D6s. And that would be it. So, y'all are going to recognize most of this. Step 1, roll initiative. Roll 1d20 and add your dexterity modifier for your character. Highest rolling character goes first, then second highest, etc. Roll an additional d20 for ties. That's a tiebreaker. Step 2, use as much of your movement as you wish, up to your maximum normal movement rate. Step 3, decide to use an attack or begin using a skill. Note, skill use when trying to defend yourself or avoid harm might be a fouled or disadvantaged roll, might take multiple rounds, which is either a set number or determined by a die roll, of combat to resolve, and might get disrupted entirely if you're struck at GM discretion. So trying to figure out how to operate a piece of equipment while people are shooting at you might not...
It's hard to do a puzzle when you're getting bashed in the face with a hammer or...
Yeah, right? Step 4, roll to hit. For hand-to-hand weapons, roll 1d20, add your vigor modifier. Vigor is both your strength and overall bodily health, as we've reduced the number of physical attributes down to 4.
Which are vigor, dexterity, intellect, and personality.
Yes. Okay. Add your close combat skill modifier, if you have one, depending on whether you're a fighty guy or not. A few weapons will use your dexterity modifier and not your vigor. So something like a stun baton, it's more of a matter of trying to touch them rather than trying to use physical force. That will be noted in the item's description. For ranged weapons, it's a d20. Add your dexterity modifier and your ranged weapons modifier if applicable. If your target is obscured by smoke, hiding behind cover, etc., there may be modifiers or adjustments. If you roll to hit higher than the target's armor rating, you hit the target. Rolling damage. Most attacks will do a d6 or a small number of d6 damage. Roll a dice, and if any 6s are rolled, roll an additional d6 for each 6. We're using exploding dice instead of critical hits.
Huh.
So that keeps our that keeps a method of making it a little more random.
Yeah.
Mitigate and apply damage. So if your target has armor that absorbs energy or kinetic or laser energy, then they might be a little bit resistant to what you're shooting them with. So that's applied. Apply the damage and go to the next person's turn in combat. Pretty similar. I know you're most excited about the ship-to-ship combat, and that's pretty unique. You wrote that up from scratch, and tell us all about it.
So, your ships will each have a health score, which in this case is MJ for megajoules. I thought that would be a more interesting than just a HP. You will have a few other stats like your base maneuverability, and your EF score. Base maneuverability is factored into how hard you are to hit, and your EF reduces the amount of damage you take from most laser guns.
So EF is the strength of the energy field that your ship has.
Yes.
And not every ship has a energy field.
No. So if you have an EF of 5 and someone has a gun that does rolled to do 10, you only take 5 points of damage. But if they rolled 3 and have a EF of 5, you take 0.
Okay, so that's like a 5-point threshold if it's an EF5.
Yeah.
So little bitty lasers that just bounce right off.
Effectively, yes.
Okay.
There's also that's actually the only real stats you have for your ship. You can go out, dog.
Yeah.
So for your ships, for your actual turn, first you're going to have your captain's leadership, which is going to be whoever has the highest score for leadership or personality.
Yeah, leadership is based off personality.
It's one of the skills you can have. If they roll a die, and based off of that, if they hit a certain threshold, I think it's 15 normally, higher if it's a ship that's definitely a higher class than yours, or lower if your crew already knows, yeah, we can easily take out that ship, and if they succeed, everybody gets advantage on their rolls.
So it sounds like your captain is making a leadership roll against a certain threshold, depending on what crew morale is going to be like.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, if they think they're in an easy fight, the captain can easily convince them that we're gonna win. And if you're severely outnumbered, it becomes something where you really have to rally the troops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your GM will decide on what the exact score will be, but as a base difficulty, it'll be 15.
Okay.
Then after that, you have your weapons officer. That's the one that does the blowing up of stuff.
Okay.
They roll a hit for each gun or torpedo. The guns, you then do something similar to the normal weapons. You roll 3d6 or however many d6, exploding. He explained
Exploding dice. Yep.
Explain what the exploding dice does. You add your modifiers, and then they subtract their hit points based off of your damage and their EF. Now, torpedoes are different. They ignore the enemy's energy field, or
Because they're a kinetic weapon and rather than an energy weapon.
yes, there's that, and also the Triptids have a railgun that does a similar effect, just not torpedoes, because I wanted it to have different kinds of weapons, more varied.
Okay, little variety, and because that's a high-speed kinetic weapon rather than an energy weapon,
Still,
so it can ignore that kind of thing.
yes, and if you hit the ship and it does more than 4 points of damage, you get to roll 3d6. You get to use this lovely table.
That is a lovely table. So 3d6 on a table, that's going to make a bell curve that brings your roll towards the center.
Yep. Most of the time, about 50% of the time, it's going to be no system. But 50% of the time, it's going to be a system that has a different negative effect depending on how many times that system has already been hit. For example, weapons. If it hits once, one of your weapons is disabled and you can't use it. Pick randomly, usually with a dice or whatever.
So what we're talking about here is basically a critical hit table. So we're looking at if the system involved is the cargo/launch bay, then only one craft at damage level 1 can be launched or recovered in a round. If the cargo/launch bay takes damage level 2, all fighter craft in the hangar take 1 megajoule of damage, and any crew take 3d6 hit points damage. So that's going to hurt, etc. So you get different damage levels. So the first time, this is a critical hit table. So
essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Any hit above a certain damage threshold
rolls on that, and your center is going to be right in that sweet spot right there with the blanks.
Yes. The worst system to hit is probably going to be the main power because that necessitates more rolls on the table.
Yes, it does, and you have to have a natural, looks like 3 on 3d6 to get there.
It's like a 1-point-something% chance.
So you're doing crippling injuries to an enemy ship.
Yes.
In theory, depending on how you roll. So you have your captain. They did their thing. Weapons officer did their thing. Engineer?
The engineer gets to roll on, I think it's 5 plus the level of the system to try and repair it. 1 level. If, let's say you have fuel cells at 1 level of damage, they get to roll if they roll a 10 or higher, with including their modifiers for engineering, that system is repaired and the negative effect no longer applies.
Okay.
They have to specify the system they're going for beforehand. So if there's a system of 3 levels, they have to have a higher roll to hit that. I think it's a 20 because it's 5 plus 5 times the level of the system damage.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so the worse these systems are damaged, the harder they are to fix.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then
so your engineer is trying to repair things mid-battle to try to keep the ship from blowing apart.
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, we have the navigator. What's their job?
The navigator, every round, the end of their round, they roll a d6 exploding, and they get to add their engineering skill to hopefully get a higher roll to hit. You also will add the base maneuverability of whatever ship you're playing, and then that is how hard your ship is to hit for other ships that round.
Okay. I've never heard of a game where you can do a skill check to make your armor class better. And if your captain was successful in their leadership, then all 3 of the other crew members are rolling with this advantage type mechanic. Okay. That's pretty good. So it sounds like you're expecting to have basically 4 members of a bridge crew.
Yes.
As the player characters.
Yes. As the player characters, if you have 3 player characters, it's fine. Combine the navigator with captain. If you have 4, if you have 5, maybe you can split up the weapons officer. If you have more than that, maybe give them like a fighter craft, which do have stats of their own, and there is their own separate ship that is in the back of the GM's guide, I believe. No.
Yes, it's in here somewhere.
It's in here.
So you'll have like this main ship, and you have a bridge crew of 3 or 4 people, and if you have more people sitting at your table, launch fighter craft, and they do the fighter craft thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes That makes sense. Um, so this takes place in some kind of a universe of what's going on in this lore-wise.
So you have this universe, well, galaxy. You're a part of the galaxy. There is a galactic union. The galactic union is sort of like the EU or
Something like that. Okay.
something like that. That does have a governing body between different systems, and different countries, or in this case, species, join it, and they give up a little bit of their sovereignty in order to join the galactic community. This galactic community is fighting these great invaders that come from some other galaxy.
Okay.
They don't know where exactly, they just know they're here and they want to conquer.
Okay. So all these different species are, uniting together in mutual defense. Are the humans in charge of this, or where do they rate?
The humans are newbies. The humans aren't very important. They are, at this point, they've only been a member for a decade or two. I don't remember the exact number of years. You're playing the first interstellar ship of the humans. You are the first galactic spacefaring ship of the humans.
Okay, so we have the first. The players are basically running the first interstellar ship of the humans. It's named the Langley after
The first American aircraft carrier that was an experimental ship just to find out what it would be like to have an aircraft carrier. So I sort of thought it would be appropriate to name this ship after it, because you're playing an experimental ship. It's going to have some kinks in it, and you're going to be making changes to it and relaying that information back to home base.
Okay. So tell me about some of the other species that are your allies.
Okay, so there are a few main species you're going to encounter. The triptids, which are a 4 feet tall on average species that are sort of tripod looking. So they have sort of roughly cylindrical torso with 3 legs coming out at equal angles, sort of in a triangular shape. Then they have a sort of head that looks vaguely cone-like, that's upside down.
Inverted cone, like a golf tee?
Sorta, well,
Okay.
not quite, but yeah, and which bit more triangular on the top with 3 eyes. The only way you can truly know which direction they're facing is which direction their mouth is.
Okay.
So they have a full 360 view of the world, because each end of the cone or triangle has an eye. They also have 3 arms going each different direction.
Okay.
They're a more logical species that enjoys scientific pursuits, not completely unlike Vulcans in that respect. Completely different than Vulcans.
Physiologically, yeah. And all right.
There's also the Callistra, which are a fish-like species that are a bit taller than humans. They look sort of like a sturgeon, would be the closest thing you might have seen in your life, except it has some arms and legs.
Humanoid fish dude. Okay.
Yes, their ships are a bit larger than most others and are known for being very durable because of it, and their ships don't have air. They have water in it.
So the entire ship is filled with water.
So it weighs a lot.
And everybody inside either has to be those guys, or they have to have, like, scuba gear
Yes.
if you're going to be stationed on one of their ships.
Yes. The Callistra can breathe air, but they do need to be in a humid environment, and they kind of hate being outside of water for extended periods of time.
Okay.
There's also the Tuntia. They are a shorter species, about 5 feet tall, bald, pale white, tannish skin, and they have 2 little antennas at the top of their head, which are telepathic. They are weakly telepathic. Most of them can just sort of give your vague feelings of what you're feeling, and some can get a bit more in depth, like, okay, what is your surface level thoughts? What are you planning on doing immediately? And some of the true masters of their psychic abilities can even lift small objects, sort of like the Force, and can do decent amount of probing to learn what you want.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. What else you want to tell us about this? I see here you have a character sheet.
Yeah.
So this is a blank character sheet. You have a couple of pre-gen characters that were supplied.
Yes.
But we have 4 attributes: vigor, dexterity, intellect, and personality. Hit points for the character is based off of
Vigor.
You have an armor rating, which would be part dexterity and part, equipment. PS.
Psychic.
No, LPE was latent psychic energy.
Yeah. Okay. PS.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah.
But okay, you can have ranks in these in this handful of skills. The ranks in the skill and a modifier.
You can have up to 3 ranks in any skill you want. That rank gives you a +3 to that skill.
Okay, so 3 ranks in a skill, you get a modifier of +9. That sounds pretty hefty when you're dealing with a D20 die roll.
Yes.
But 3 ranks in a skill, and that's the max. It should be a big number. Okay, yeah. Equipment, defensive equipment, current hit points. You have a couple of things. You have your weapon section down here. That makes sense. That's a character sheet. But then your ship has a character sheet. The ship's name, the ship's class, and if you're playing the Langley, that's already going to be filled in.
However, if you really want to, you can change the name of the ship. It's just, that's sort of the default, and I thought it'd be a cool default.
So if you have 4 players, one of them is going to be assigned, one of them is going to be assigned as the captain, one the weapons officer, etc. Current hull damage, and then you have your critical hit table. I can't say that I've seen a character sheet for a ship in quite some time.
No.
This looks good. So we have both a player's guide and the Game Master's Guide. And in the Game Master's Guide, there are stats for certain alien creatures you might encounter and some adventure plot hooks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of based on everything being, you can do it as a lengthy campaign, and you can do it as kind of individual episodes.
Yeah, sort of vaguely inspired by Star Trek.
Yeah. I mean, any science fiction TV show tend to be episodic, or you could do it like a movie, in which case it's a campaign.
Yeah.
Where the whole thing takes place over several game sessions. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's about it. Thanks for talking to us. GM Kurt, out.